SAS demonstration, restructuring SAS datasets, single record to multi-records. The data we are going to use for this demonstration consists of a sample of 22 subjects from a study of affective facial expressions. Several pieces of music were played to each subject in an attempt to elicit selected affected states. Trial 1 was a baseline relaxing music condition. Trial 2 was designed to produce positive effects, and Trial 3 was designed to produce agitation. Each trial lasted 90 seconds, and the response variable at each trial was the mean EMG from the left brow region. The variable order in the data file is subject number followed by the 3 trial EMG measurements. For example, the first observation we're reading in is subject 1. 143 was the EMG value at baseline or at trial 1. 368 was the EMG value at trial 2. And 345 was the EMG value at trial 3. So if we were to run this code and then just do a printout of our data, we see that we have a single record per subject. And so all of the information on the 3 trials is on one record for each subject. Now let's say we want to create a file where for each subject we have 3 observations. So we see here in this comment, this is what we are looking for. This is how we want our new data set to look. So we're interested in converting our data set so there are multiple records per patient. The code for going from wide to long is a lot more straightforward than the code for going from long to wide that was shown in the previous demonstration video on data restructuring. So we are going to create a new data set called multrec, and we're going to bring in our data set single. So the way that we are going to create 3 observations per subject is by using output statements. And so we're processing 1 observation at a time, but for that 1 observation we are using 3 separate output statements to create 3 observations for that particular observation or subject. So we're going to first output a variable EMG, which is set equal to trial 1, and we're going to create a variable called trial equals 1. And then in the second group, we are going to create another variable that's also EMG, but it's going to be a second observation for that particular subject, and we're going to set it equal to trial 2, which is the value of EMG at trial 2. And then we're going to set trial equal to 2 to indicate that's our second trial. And then we are going to create a third observation for that particular subject by setting EMG equal to the value of trial 3 and then saying trial equals 3, and we have a third output statement. And then the only variables that we are keeping on our data set multrec is going to be subject, trial, and EMG. So let's go ahead and print out our data set multrec and see what it looks like. And notice before I run the code that I'm sorting my data set by subject and then within subject by trial. So you see here we have now 3 observations for each subject, and for each observation we have the trial indicating which time EMG was measured, and we have the actual EMG value. So we have taken a data set where we had 1 observation per subject and created a data set where we have multiple observations per subject, each observation indicating a separate trial. Now we can do some interesting things now that we've created this new data set. In this next example, I want to select the highest EMG value per subject. So the way I'm going to do that is, first of all, I'm going to sort my data set by subject and descending EMG value. So we're going to, within each subject, order the data from the largest EMG value to the smallest. And then I'm creating a new data set called high EMG, and I'm using a by statement, and because I'm reading in the data set with a set statement and a by statement, I can make use of the first dot variable. So basically what I'm saying is I'm only interested in keeping the first observation for a particular subject in my new data set. And because I've sorted that data set in the order of highest EMG to lowest EMG for a particular subject, it's only going to select that first observation for each patient or subject. So let's take a look at a printout where we've listed only the highest EMGs for each subject. So now for each of our 22 subjects, we have the EMG value that was the highest. So for subject 1, the EMG value that was the highest for that subject occurred at trial 2. For subject number 2, the EMG value that was the highest for that subject occurred at trial 3. So again, what I did here is I sorted my data set, this new data set that I had created where we had multiple observations per patient. I sorted this data first by subject and within subject by descending EMG values. So the largest EMG value was first. And then I used the first dot statement to just keep only the first observation per subject. And the first observation was the observation which had the largest EMG value. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a frequency of trials with the highest EMG values. So I'm going to do a proc-freq using my data set high EMG, and I'm going to do a tables of just trial. What is this output telling us? It tells us whether the type of music can affect our emotional state as measured by EMG. So for trial 1, only 5 observations had their highest EMG value coming from trial 1. And you recall that trial 1 was our baseline or most relaxing music trial. In trial 2, we had music that had sort of a positive effect. 2 of the subjects had their highest EMG value when they were listening to positive effects music. And finally, 15 of our subjects, or 68% of our subjects, had their highest EMG value when they were listening to music that was supposed to be agitating. So trial 3 has the most subjects' highest EMG values. And this is not surprising since trial 3 was designed to produce agitation. So again, 15 of our subjects had the highest EMG value recorded for trial 3. This concludes the SAS demonstration, restructuring SAS datasets, single record to multi-record.